I never imagined a life could be rerouted by a single sentence. One night, Vanessa looked at me over the rim of her wineglass and said, flat as a receipt, "I like you, Ethan, I just don't love you anymore." 5 years of plans, rent, late-night takeout, and waking up to her face were reduced to a label, roommates. No drama. No begging. No explanation beyond a polite, clinical dismissal. Most people would break, shout, or beg. I did none of those. Instead, the part of me that maps systems and traces logic kicked in. I began cataloging who paid what, who did which chores, which routines could be switched off without a fight. If she wanted to live off my kindness without the commitment, then the rules would change. Quietly, efficiently, irreversibly. She thought she could keep the perks and drop the promises. She hadn't counted on the quiet precision of a man who treats heartbreak like a problem to be solved. My name is Ethan Carter. I'm a systems analyst in Raleigh, North Carolina. I spend my days untangling messy data, locating the single point of failure in sprawling systems, and turning chaos into order. Outside the office, I like my life organized the same way. Routines, calendars, shared responsibilities. For 5 years I thought Vanessa and I were a team. We shared an apartment, split the utilities, mostly, and had a joint savings account for trips we joked we'd take one day. I paid the larger share of rent because, honestly, my job paid better. I didn't resent it. I thought of it as an investment in us. Vanessa was magnetic. She had that effortless way of making people feel seen, of telling a story and making it sparkle. She worked in design and loved unpredictability, weekend pop-up shows, last-minute concerts, spontaneous day trips. Where I was predictable, she was a surprise. I loved that about her until the surprise started to feel like a recurring expense. I covered dinners when she was between gigs, ran to the pharmacy at midnight when she had a panic about a clogged pore before a meeting, and booked the really nice massage for her birthday because she'd mentioned being stressed. The small actions piled up into comfort for her and into habit for me. I fixed the leaky sink, replaced the furnace thermostat when it went haywire in January, and learned which coffee creamer she preferred, vanilla, not hazelnut, because I liked that morning smile on her face. Our arguments were normal. Money here and there, a forgotten anniversary one year, her lateness to a family dinner. Nothing seismic. I convinced myself that because we could talk through it, we were solid. That's the thing about trust. It makes you mistake consistency for invulnerability. Then, on an otherwise unremarkable Friday, she sat me down like she was about to explain a minor scheduling conflict. Her voice was oddly even, practiced. "Ethan," she said, "I need to tell you something. I like you. I do. But I don't love you. Not the way you love me. I think we'd be better as roommates." I remember the way the words landed, clinical, almost logistical, as if she were making a product decision instead of breaking a life. The wineglass stayed in her hand, her shoulders didn't tremble. No pleading, no apologies. She had reduced 5 years to a relationship status and handed me the label, roommates. My first instinct wasn't theatrical grief. It was calculation. I could have thrown plates, begged, or staggered with some melodramatic scene she might have used later to paint herself as the injured party. Instead, the part of me trained to trace systems and spot failure modes flicked on. The apartment itself was a network: rent, utilities, grocery runs, chores, emotional labor. If she wanted the status change, fine, but the protocol would change with it. I started cataloging mentally at first. Who paid which bill? Which subscriptions were in both our names? Which keys did she have? When did she come home? I thought of the couch as nodes of intangible support, of midnight texts and hugs as services I had been providing that, until that moment, I'd thought were reciprocal. If she wanted to downgrade our contract to roommates, I would treat the next chapter like a migration, graceful, methodical, and irreversible. When Vanessa rose from the chair like nothing catastrophic had happened, I nodded and said, simply, "Okay." My tone was calm because I was already 2 steps ahead, mapping, planning, and, in the quiet of that kitchen, resolving that if she wanted the perks without the promises, she'd get a very different arrangement than she imagined. At first, Vanessa seemed almost relaxed. like she just pulled off the smartest deal of her life. She strutted around the apartment with this smug sense of freedom, thinking she'd engineered the perfect setup. My stability, my financial cushion, my quiet loyalty, all without the responsibility of actually being in a relationship. She thought she could keep the perks while cutting the commitment. She didn't realize she was dealing with someone who thrives on structure. Someone who doesn't just react, but recalibrates. That's when I initiated what I would later call the roommate protocol. The first Monday after her little speech, I woke up at 6 as usual. I brewed a single cup of black coffee. No extra mug, no vanilla creamer, no breakfast sizzling on the stove. When Vanessa wandered into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes, she frowned. "Where's my coffee?" she asked. I looked up from my laptop, voice calm. "Roommates handle their own meals." Her smirk faltered. That evening, I taped an itemized spreadsheet to the fridge: rent, utilities, Wi-Fi, trash pickup. Each expense was split down the middle, exact to the penny. I highlighted her portion and wrote, "Due the 1st of every month." Venmo accepted. Groceries? I rearranged the pantry and fridge. Separate shelves, labeled with masking tape, Ethan and Vanessa. If she grabbed my almond milk or swiped one of my protein bars, she'd find an invoice on the counter by nightfall. Chores? Divided evenly. The vacuum sat idle unless I used it. The laundry room became her battlefield of neglected clothes. I didn't nag, didn't complain. I just didn't do it for her anymore. At first, she tried to laugh it off. "You're so petty," she said, rolling her eyes. But I wasn't angry, wasn't loud. I was polite, professional, and ruthlessly consistent. Her birthday landed 2 weeks later. I could see it in her eyes that morning. The anticipation, the unspoken expectation of flowers, jewelry, or at the very least dinner reservations. Instead, she got a flat, "Happy birthday, Vanessa," and a sticky note on the fridge reminding her she was late on the electric bill. That's when the cracks began to show. She realized that roommate Ethan came with none of the perks of boyfriend Ethan. But Vanessa wasn't ready to surrender control. She tried subtle manipulations. She left dirty dishes stacked like a leaning tower in the sink, blasted sad breakup songs when I worked late, even stumbled drunk into my bed one night, pretending it was an accident. I didn't budge. I simply guided her out, tucked her blanket on the couch, and went back to sleep. And then the real betrayal surfaced. One night, she left her phone buzzing on the counter while she showered. A message preview glowed on the screen. "Can't wait to see you again, red heart, Dylan." Dylan. The coworker she swore was just a friend. It clicked then. She hadn't merely downgraded me to a roommate. She had already upgraded, just not with me. But here's the thing about me: I don't explode. I don't confront until the trap is set. Instead, I gather. I prepare. And when the timing is perfect, I strike. Would you like me to carry this tone of cold, methodical precision into part 3, the plan, and make the revenge even more elaborate and satisfying? I didn't need drama. I needed leverage. If Vanessa wanted to turn our relationship into a roommate arrangement while keeping all the benefits, she deserved a protocol that matched her new label: clinical, efficient, and impossible to argue with. So I built one. Step 1. Financial control. That morning I drove to the bank before work. I closed our joint savings account and transferred the balance to a new account in my name. I called the credit card company and revoked the authorized user privileges on the card she'd been using for emergencies. When her card was declined at the salon 2 days later, she called me screaming. I answered in the same voice I used for work, calm, neutral. "Oh, must be a roommate problem," I said, and hung up. I also canceled automatic payments she relied on: the streaming service, her phone plan, which had been on my contract, the food delivery account. Each cancellation was small on its own, but together they tightened the squeeze. Step 2. Legal and logistical moves. The lease was under my name alone. That was strategic years ago when she insisted. Now that detail was my advantage. I phoned our landlord and explained that I would be terminating the lease early and moving into a new one-bedroom across town. I didn't announce details. Discretion mattered. Then I hired movers on a neutral weekday and scheduled them for a time she wouldn't expect. They packed her things professionally, labeled every box, and moved them into a rented storage unit under a different name. No chaos, no spectacle, just a clean, documented transition. By the time she returned from whatever errand or fling she had planned, her physical presence in the apartment would be diminished to a neat stack of boxes miles away. Step 3. Information warfare. I'm a systems analyst. I understand metadata, timestamps, and chain of custody. I saved everything. Screenshots of her DMs with Dylan, the Instagram stories, timestamps from her public posts. I asked Chris to forward me anything suspicious he'd seen, receipts, photos from the resort, even a blurry image of them leaving a bar together. I compiled it into a secure folder, backed it up to the cloud with encrypted copies, and printed a tidy packet for legal use. I didn't want to humiliate her publicly, yet. I wanted something that could stand up in a courtroom or be handed to an HR director without being waved away as a he said/she said. Evidence, not emotion. Step 4. Social pressure, soft and precise. I don't believe in gossip for its own sake, but social pressure is a lever. I didn't start a smear campaign. I seeded questions. A text to a mutual friend, "Hey, did you see Vanessa's story from the coast?" A quiet message to a colleague who was close to Dylan, "Is everything okay at work?" The objective was to let the right people notice, to create a ripple that would carry evidence to where it mattered without me looking like a vengeful ex. Step 5. Timing, the coup de grace. Vanessa begged me to accompany her to a summer networking event. For appearances, she said. Yes. I would go, not to perform grief but to deliver the facts to an audience that could act. I prepared an anonymous envelope for the company's HR director with the documentation of impropriety, messages, expense receipts, and a note that suggested an internal review. It wasn't drama. It was accountability. I wanted the situation to be handled by protocol, by policies and codes of conduct, not by my temper. Everything was aligned: legal protection, financial disengagement, physical separation, documented proof, and social pressure targeted to the right levers. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to beg. I just needed to wait until the structure I'd built began to collapse under its own weight, and then step back and watch it fall. The night of the networking event, Vanessa was radiant, heels, designer dress, hair styled like she was auditioning for a perfume ad. She slipped her arm through mine and whispered, "Just smile and make me look good tonight, okay?" The irony wasn't lost on me. For the crowd, she played the perfect girlfriend. I mirrored her energy, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, posing for photos. To anyone watching, we were still a power couple. Then I saw him, Dylan. He froze the second his eyes met mine. That flicker of panic was all the confirmation I needed. I didn't glare or cause a scene. I simply raised my glass, nodded once, and went back to conversation. He looked like a man waiting for an axe to fall. Halfway through the evening, as the VP raised a toast, I excused myself and walked toward the HR director. I handed her an envelope. No words, no explanations, just the evidence. Inside was everything: screenshots of their messages, receipts of business expenses that were really beach getaways, time-stamped photos. Proof airtight enough to choke on. By dessert, the shift began. Whispers spread like smoke in a theater. Dylan excused himself abruptly, avoiding eye contact. Vanessa noticed, confusion etched on her face, but she had no idea the fire was already under her feet. 2 days later, the detonation hit. Dylan was suspended for inappropriate workplace conduct. Vanessa got called into HR for a 3-hour interrogation. That night she stormed home, eyes blazing. "You did this. You sabotaged me," she screamed. I looked up from my laptop, expression cool. "Roommates don't discuss personal drama, remember?" Then I put my headphones back on. The final blow came a week later. Vanessa returned from a weekend trip, likely with Dylan, trying to patch up their sinking ship, only to find the locks changed. A sheriff's notice was taped to the door, signed and sealed. The lease was mine alone. Her belongings? Already boxed, labeled, and secured in a storage unit across town. The hallway became a stage. She screamed, pounding on the door. Neighbors peeked out, some recording on their phones. You're cruel. You ruined my life, she shrieked, her voice cracking. But I didn't answer. Because the truth was simple. I hadn't ruined her life. I just stopped sponsoring it. The ripple effects were merciless. Friends who once rallied to her side started pulling away once the screenshot surfaced. Her mother, who had always defended her, called me in tears to apologize after seeing the evidence herself. Dylan cut ties entirely once the HR probe turned serious. He wasn't going to risk his career for a sinking romance. And me? I signed the lease on my new one-bedroom. I carried in the last box, shut the door, and for the first time in years, the silence felt like freedom. No chaos. No manipulation. Just peace, and the knowledge that betrayal, when answered with precision, becomes its own justice. Looking back, I don't regret a single decision. Vanessa believed she could rewrite the rules of our relationship, strip away the love, and still keep the lifestyle I provided. She thought she could downgrade me to a roommate while upgrading herself to another man in secret. What she didn't realize was that betrayal always comes with a price, and she had just handed me the bill. People often imagine revenge as screaming matches, broken dishes, or dramatic confrontations. But real justice doesn't need chaos. It doesn't need fists or fireworks. The most devastating revenge is quiet, calculated, and absolute. It's watching the person who wronged you unravel under the weight of their own lies, while you move forward unbothered. That's exactly what happened with Vanessa. The truth is, I didn't ruin her life. She did that herself by trying to play both sides, keeping me as her safety net while entertaining someone else behind my back. All I did was remove the cushion she thought would always be there. Without it, she had to face reality head-on, and reality hit harder than I ever could. But this isn't just about her downfall. It's about what I learned. The message I want anyone listening to take away is this. Don't ignore red flags. If someone tells you with their actions, or their words, that they don't value you, believe them the first time. Don't hand over blind loyalty. Love without reciprocity is just exploitation dressed up as romance. Don't underestimate your own strength. Even when betrayal makes you feel powerless, you still hold the most important power of all, the power to walk away, reclaim your dignity, and rebuild on your own terms. Vanessa underestimated me. She thought I would crumble, beg, or keep giving while she took. Instead, I calculated, I executed, and I moved on. And in the end, she lost everything. Her relationship, her reputation, even her financial safety net. I lost nothing. In fact, I gained everything. Freedom, clarity, and control of my own life again. And that, to me, is the sweetest revenge of all. Not the drama, not the spectacle, but the peace that comes when you close a toxic chapter and never look back. So if you're sitting there right now, wondering whether to keep holding on to someone who betrays you, let this be your sign. You don't have to. You're stronger than you think. And sometimes, walking away is not just survival, it's victory. That was my story, how betrayal turned into a calculated plan that left my ex facing the fallout of her own lies. But now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been cheated on, manipulated, or blindsided by someone you trusted completely? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and your words might give courage to someone going through the same heartbreak. If you found this story gripping, and you want more real-life tales of betrayal, revenge, and justice delivered with no filter, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. I've got more stories coming, darker, wilder, and even more satisfying than this one. And believe me, you do not want to miss what's next.